you are the symbol of Islam. But on the other hand, we have to discuss some social and political issues, which can be done on a level of democratical debates and public debates. So that's why I am not, I would say personally, afraid about the future of Morocco, because we have certain boundaries that protect Morocco from shifting radical within the Islamist ideology. But on the other hand, I am just wondering, just asking, I don't know if it's right or wrong, but I am just asking, why Sufism in politics? Why not only to appeal to a modern legitimacy regarding politics by itself? We have the distinction between the two spheres, between the sacred sphere and the profane sphere. So the profane sphere has its own logic, its own rules. So let's say play these rules within a democratical state and within the democratical debates, and see what different social classes, not only the middle classes, but also the upper classes and the lower classes are wanting to do. But I'm sure that the main issue is the one of economical and social development, and second, some cultural recognition of the specificity of regions, and then the final one, which is a democratic issue. So what I fear about that is, who is sure about what Sufism can do now and tomorrow? So, and the day after tomorrow, we will be short of policy. We're going to appeal for another social actor or religious actor. This is only a week, or say a short sight for the shifts within the Moroccan policy and religion. So that's what I am afraid.
Thank you. And I'll open the floor. If you could please state your name and affiliation.
Max Cohen, graduate student in the University of Iceland system. And I have two questions that are interrelated. And the first one is, I guess you mentioned the idea of extended sovereignty. And I was wondering if that extended sovereignty is given the same credence by Moroccan expatriates that is ascribed by the Moroccan government.
Yeah, can you repeat your question?
The extended sovereignty of the Moroccan government that you mentioned, the idea of sovereignty over expatriate Moroccans.
Yeah.
How do those Moroccans view that principle? Do they view themselves as subject to the Moroccan government abroad? And are there obviously there must be multiple points of view, but is there a dominant feeling there?
You use the word subjects, and I totally use the word subjects, and I totally agree with that, because the Moroccan legitimacy is based upon two pillars. The first one is a traditional one, and the traditional one here as a symbol of customs and body language. So we have here the king with a robe, saluting the Moroccan population in the throne celebration. But when the king wear a European or a modern costume and with a tie, he does not speak about subjects, he's speaking about citizens. So these two references are, for non-Moroccan people, it's confusing, because either you are this or you are that. You cannot be either this and that. And in Morocco, it's something which is very common. In the week, we are dressing like you would say, but on Friday, we are dressing in robes. All Moroccans and most of the Moroccan population are dressing robes. So this is a certain cultural communication of how Moroccan perceive themselves and themselves regarding their relation to the states. So how the Moroccan feels that we are subjects to the king or citizens. So you have both of them. You have the educated middle class that are tending to understand politics in Morocco in a European way, a modern way, Western way, and maybe they are not that much for the religious legitimacy for the Moroccan king. But you have I would say not the lower classes, but the population, popular people that are recognizing themselves in traditional symbols of Moroccan authority. And for them, the question of being subjects of citizens is irrelevant. What they are for is they are asking the government and the crown to have employment, to have dignity, to have job, to have health care plan, and so on. But I agree with you that when we see what the expatriates Moroccan think about that in Europe and United States, I cannot tell you, honestly, I cannot respond to this question since I made any inquiry into that, so this will be just a speculation, and I prefer not to speculate.
What's the question here? The man in the
man in the non-Washington raincoat. We got it. My name is Larry Velti. I'm from the Near East South Asia Center at National Defense University, and I'm going to take Kate's advice and go to Marrakesh at the end of the month. So hopefully you'll be there.
Good. So I can meet you.
In implementing this very multifaceted reform program, how much pushback and resistance has the monarchy gotten? Not necessarily from the opponents or from the radicals or from illegal organizations, but from the normal sort of bureaucratic inertia and other institutions that are resistant to change, not only in Morocco but worldwide. And what has the king been able to do to overcome that?
Okay, so you speak about resistance, and I agree that any policy, any state, any action in the world, they have the pro and the cons. So when it comes to the resistance that responded to the Moroccan or the government policy, of course you have people that oppose to this, and mainly these people are more coming from an Islamist background. And the Islamist background is to see what is coming from the states as a bad thing, not a good thing, which is not true, because the conflict between society and state, or the competition between the two spheres, the sphere of society and the sphere of state, it's something which is very hard to understand if we don't see some elements. So the psychological one is very important. As I mentioned before, we can hate our states, we can hate our presidents, but we do not hate our institutions, our presidency. So what we argue with is the action, the policy, how it's taking place. But we're not arguing about the institution by itself. We just want to influence the orientation of the institution to do this or that. For example, for Islamists to be more Muslim, to be to apply the Sharia, to bring back Islamic laws. But for secular people, they just want to have more liberty, more democracy, and I would say to bring more modern culture within the Moroccan system. Of course, there are some resistance. And the resistance, let me give you an example. The Ministry of Endowment did something which is a little bit weird. It's introducing the TVs in the mosques. Each mosque has its own TV. And so mainly for mosques who do not have an imam for the Friday's speech, so they can pursue the Friday talk through our TV and not directly from an imam. So the introduction of technology within a sacred space is something weird, is not? So can you imagine a church with a plasma, a huge one, like concert of Woodstock? So this is the implication of technology among sacred spaces. But yes, there are some resistance, and every new thing faces resistance. And maybe what we are seeing now, that resistance for introduction of new things within Moroccan religious and political